Hi, thanks for joining us today. Firstly, I must apologize for the late start. It's down to a technical issue. As far as I'm aware, it's not cyber related. My name's Ian Cole, and I'm a director within PwC UK's cyber division. Now, a bit about myself. I started my career in cyber in 1997. Now, let's correct that. Information security in 1997. I then went on to a company called Internet Security Systems, which got bought out by IBM in 2006, at which point I joined a company called Capgemini, and who I was with for near enough 16 years before joining PwC last year. Now, I'm really pleased to be the host for this episode of PwC's UK's Black Tech Talent with some fantastic guests. I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute, but first, I want to set the scene for what we in cyber sector are dealing with and why it's a great place for inquisitive minds to develop a career. There is no end of high-profile organizations on the receiving end of cyber attacks. Last year, UK organizations experienced an average of 788 weekly cyber attacks, an increase of over 77% on 2021. Now, what's less publicized is a cost to fix the damage, which extends beyond just direct financial cost. So it's no surprise that the demand for cybersecurity is at an all-time high. The government estimates there's a workforce gap about 14,000 people. That's huge. There simply aren't enough people to fill the roles. So it's a fantastic career choice if you're interested. Now, this is why we're focusing on Black Tech Talent Series on cybersecurity. We want to encourage more people from the Black community to see the opportunities of a career in this sector. If you're listening in, you can load your questions in LinkedIn Live in the Q&A section, and we'll aim to answer those questions throughout the session. So let's get into the conversation. Now, I'll start by introducing my guests, or let my guests introduce themselves more to the point. I'm going to start with Sam. Sam, do you want to give a little introduction to yourself in terms of who you are?
Sure. My name is Samuel Jubido. I'm a manager in the cybersecurity business unit, specifically within the OT team, where I lead on various OT transformation projects within the different industry verticals, oil and gas, energy and manufacturing. I'm also a Collaborate ambassador, an initiative set up for the people within PwC to feel a bit more inclusive and to empower us to be ourselves within PwC.
It's great. Lovely to have you. Sharifa.
Hi.
Yes, hi.
So I'm Sharifa Lahan. I work within the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, or BASE, and I lead on the Network and Information Systems regulations, which essentially are geared towards ensuring that our essential services, of which energy is one of, are cyber resilient. So yeah, nice to be here.
Great to have you. Now, Simon.
Yeah, hi, Ian. Really good to be here, and thank you for inviting me. So, Simon Hepburn, CEO of UK Cybersecurity Council. The key work of the council is based on 5 core pillars: setting the standards for the profession, setting an ethical framework for the profession, work on outreach and diversity. That's about widening participation and breaking down some of the diversity. Thought leadership, for the wider profession, and also the work on careers and qualifications. So really demystifying the routes into the profession. Thank you for inviting me.
Good. Thanks, Simon. Lovely to have you here. But just on that very point there, Simon, let's pick up on that for a bit. Now, when I started off, I mentioned about 14,000 people who are, if you like, gaps in cybersecurity. And situations have been worse with sort of the Black community. And it's got me pondering, and rather than me answering the question, I'll throw it to you. Why do you think there's a gap?
I think the gap's really, from my view, kind of based on, there's a whole concept of you can't be what you don't see. So there's not much kind of promotion or recognition of kind of the Black talent within cybersecurity and sometimes in wider IT. People don't really understand some of the routes into the profession. So again, if you don't understand the career routes, you don't understand what qualifications or certifications or you might have a concept of that you need to be a programmer or IT professional to join the profession, then that obviously creates barriers, because then you look at other careers. And I'm really here to say that there are fantastic opportunities within cybersecurity, fantastic opportunities within the sector, as whether it's on an apprenticeship level, T levels, degrees, masters, etc., and also early talent around kind of graduate programs. So really, for me, it's about sharing that there's great opportunities. We absolutely welcome people within the sector and profession, and I would say people to really try and kind of join us in kind of achieving that objective.
That's really good to understand that. Which probably leads me to ask you, Sam, well, how did you get into cyber? Because I'm saying there's a gap. We can see that there's a gap, but what attracted you to cyber?
Well, sure, that's really good. I'll probably start with the sector of cyber I'm in. I'm in OT cybersecurity. And in cybersecurity, you have IT, which is mostly focused on sort of securing the data and making sure data is safe. And what with OT, it's more about safety and availability of the systems, which is to be protected. So my background started off as an engineer. So I went to Loughborough University to do a degree in electrical and electronic engineering, and then joined a power company where I was an ECNI pathway trainee. And that sort of got me hands-on with OT systems, things like calibration and then also configuration. And then with this, in 2018, we had the NIS regulation, the directive that got transposed into the UK law. And in the power sector, Ofgem is the competent authority, and therefore they were in charge to implement the new regulations. And BASE, which Sharifa works at, is the government department responsible for tiering the operator of essential service. So a secondment position came on, and due to my passion for OT systems and sort of system networking, I became a DCS security engineer, leading and supporting the OT security consultants that came on site to carry on to do the projects. And then I sort of got into OT security, and then I furthered on to do my MSc in software and system security at the University of Oxford, just about to finish that. And then I became the information security manager OT of the power company, looking after 10 power plants in the UK and the gas storage facilities from a cybersecurity point of view, both technical and legal. So that was sort of my journey into cybersecurity, really, just curiosity to understand how things work in addition to the regulation which was set by the government.
That's brilliant. So the opportunity presented itself, and then you just gone from strength to strength and just led on from that perspective. So that's really brilliant. Sherry, if I could turn to you, and it hasn't escaped the audience's attention that you're representing the female in the group, so that's really good to learn. Yeah. But by saying that, I mean, how did you get into cyber? Because it's kind of scary, you're surrounded by blokes, and probably that's representative of the market, but really good to understand how you got into it.
Yeah, so my background, so in terms of degree, I did a law degree, so I have a legal training by background, and then I started working in government. So I've done a number of national security roles within government, so working on things like investigatory powers, and as well as the government's counter-terrorism strategy. Before joining cyber, I worked on data protection, in regards to how the security services, law enforcement services process our data. And then I guess also was a bit more curious about, how do we go more into this data protection? And we know cybersecurity is such a big thing nowadays. So then I saw an opportunity within the network and information systems regulations lead within BASE. So applied and joined, and I mean, as you said, typically it is a lot of men. So but I think things are improving, definitely.
That's good. That's really good to learn. And the bit that you kind of glossed over, if I'm honest, is that you come in not from a STEM background, from a law background, and you've used that as your career path to get into cyber. And of course, when we kind of talk about STEM, it's a common myth, if you like, that you need to come from a STEM background. But you're proving the point that you really don't. Living proof, I should say, that you don't, and you can be successful in that. Which kind of leads me on to Simon. So thank you very much for that, Sharifa. So Simon, I mean, if I could just stretch that a bit, because you started off having a bit of a conversation around different routes, especially the work that you're doing with the UK Cybersecurity Council in terms of making it accessible.
Absolutely.
So it'll be good to hear your story, or at least your view on where we are with, those sort of opportunities.
Absolutely. So I think it's one of the biggest myths is that you need to be STEM, as I said, or computer programmer, etc., to join the profession. And I think, to be absolutely frank, I think in some roles I would say advantageous. Okay. but not for all. And I think that's where the differences is. So, you know, I know people who are currently in cybersecurity that came from archaeological background, from data science background, from obviously maths, etc. So that's fine and great, but also psychologists, because to understand the human behaviour that sits behind, especially some of the attacks, that's important. So as important. So again, a lot of the work that we're doing is to really, one, demystify the route in. So again, looking at, you know, T levels, looking at apprenticeships, and really ensuring those opportunities are provided to whether young people or career changers, which is really, really important. It's really important, exactly as you said, you know, over 14,000 people, that skill gap within the profession currently. And that's increasing. So what we actually need to do is we need to fill those skills back, but also ensure we're getting that right talent pipeline. So creating the pipeline from schools, colleges, universities, but also for people in current industries or trades who are considering cybersecurity as a profession. And then for us to demystify how do you basically get into that profession. I could talk for quite a while, so I will pass on to my colleagues to actually share their experiences.
Okay, that's useful. I'll tell you a little story, however. Way back when I was doing a lot of recruitment, I had, and as part of a recruitment panel for, if you like, grads coming through. It was a grads apprenticeship. And one of the questions that were really posed, I mean, they came with a case study. One of the responses I got was from somebody who wasn't within cyber, within the STEM sort of area. And this person was actually in the arts, and more specifically, theatre. And they completely blew me away. I'm talking 10 years ago when I did this, and I still remember it to this day. So, yeah, so if I could turn to you then, Sam, when you kind of think about, we're talking about the black issues and getting more black people into cyber. Let's focus on that for a bit. I mean, how do we improve inclusivity for blacks and open it up for black people? Do you have a view on that?
Sure, really good. I'll say, first of all, a conversation like this and this panel is very important in terms of seeing black professionals where you can reach out to mentorship, and just to capitalise on what Simon just said, you can't be what you can see. So having these conversations whereby people can reach out to us, this will be quite good. And also the benefits of having an inclusive team is you get a diverse part of sort of conversation and risk. Because risk management, the more diverse experience you have in a room, the better you can come up with a risk decision. And also from a sort of a community point of view, the more people that are in cybersecurity, we then increase in the cybersecurity awareness within the community and then spreading across the knowledge. So I would say in general, conversation like this is quite helpful. And then obviously through mentoring people to come to the community will be quite helpful.
Okay, that's good. If I could do the same, Sharif, have you got a view as well on that?
Yeah, essentially, I'd echo everything that's been said. I think it's important to show that, you know, there are, you know, people who are of colour or, you know, black people who do work in cybersecurity. I think, as you said, it's about nurturing young talent and nurturing people from young. So schools, universities, etc. And also trying to ensure that, you know, you don't just walk the walk, talk the talk, you walk the walk. So organisations should ensure that, you know, diversity is at the forefront of what they're doing, and that they nurture the talent that they have. You know, they try to ensure that, you know, people can see themselves or reflections of themselves within their organisation. So yeah, I think pretty much everything that's been said, really.
That's great. Simon, you're a senior person within UK Cyber, nothing bigger than the CEO. I mean, do you have a view on that in terms of the sort of attracting more black people to the profession? Yeah. Is it about having somebody like yourself in that role or not?
I think representation is really important. I mean, one of the things I would like to share is that I am not a cybersecurity kind of technical expert at all, so I'm completely non-technical. Oh, that surprises quite a few people. But it's interesting. I didn't have to be. It's about what I bring to the table, and what I bring to the table is my knowledge and experience and skills around quality assurance and around skills of gender education, charity, 25 years within that kind of, and also engaging with government departments. So it's how you basically develop an organisation that can make an impact and dealing with a kind of core issue, and the skills gap is a core issue. So the representation is really important. I think the having these kind of conversations, I echo everything that my colleagues have basically said. So the trying to ensure that people see people like themselves in positions, but also having the conversations to engage people within the work that we're all basically doing. So this kind of conversation, I think, is absolutely essential. And just to share, as part of the work that we've done within the council, last year we had a ethnic minority in cyber event, and again, it was about the conversation of what's the current barriers for people of colour, ethnic minorities in joining the profession. So again, we were doing, and that's about thought leadership piece. And so it's not around just the theoretical side, it's what can we practically do to amplify and to promote more people, one, joining the profession around the great opportunities, but also understand some of the current barriers so we can share that with colleagues and other organisations.
That's really good to hear. And I've just observed, pennies just dropped, and I don't know why it didn't before. We've got two people on this panel who are in cyber roles, but who don't come from a STEM background. So kind of echoing some of the myths that we've got within cyber, just saying, hey, I've got to come from a STEM background. I need to know programming to go into cyber. And you've kind of, just kicked that to touch and it's like dispel that completely. So that's really, really interesting. Sharifa, if I could come to you again, and I'm going to hop on this female side of thing because, so you're right. I mean, it's an improving situation, but how do we encourage more black women, if you like, to take on the role, to see cyber as an opportunity? And I'll keep saying this as a theme throughout. We've got a huge number of spaces of vacancies, if you like, for cyber. How do we attract them?
I think, as we said, it's about presenting cyber or cyber opportunities or cyber as a career to people from a young age. I think, we were speaking earlier and, we were saying that in terms of images or cybersecurity that you see out, there's usually someone in a hoodie, who's usually a man in a dark room. And I think, if we change such stereotypes to start with, I think that's a really important aspect of it. Growing up, I didn't necessarily think of cyber as something that I could go into, because you typically just think of men when you think about technology or just cybersecurity more generally. And I think also in terms of from an organisation perspective, trying to ensure that you hire in the image of how you would like your workforce to look like. So oftentimes people look at senior members of a team and it's like just men or not black men or people of colour typically. So trying to reflect the team that you would like to have an inclusivity. And I think it's just an education piece. We've mentioned mentoring earlier, so being mentoring young girls and young women and women just generally in the different paths that are available within cybersecurity. I think those are some of the important things that would attract women more generally.
Okay, that's really good. Now, I'm going to do something really odd, and I'm going to probably pick on some of the men, just say, well, what can you do? What can we do within our space, right? Just say, right, okay, if we're saying it's no, I don't believe it's male-dominated. I'm just putting that out there. But I do realise and recognise there's an opportunity, if you like, for more diversity in terms of getting more women on board. And if I'm honest, right, I do like the way women think in terms of some of the projects that I'm working on and what they do. So I'll fly the flag a bit. I'm not saying I'm not letting the blokes down, but I'm just saying they're different way of thinking and things, and I recognise that. So, Simon, if I could turn to you and just ask, is there things that you've got or you can think of that helps, if you like, in terms of breaking that barrier down and making it even more open for women, black women, I should say, to see this as an attractive route to...
Absolutely. I mean, some of the points have been made, but I think it's important to have the kind of diversity in an organisation. So diversity creates diversity of thought, diversity of innovation, diversity of solution. You see, so because of some of the issues that we're faced with in relation to cyber and cybersecurity and some of the attacks especially, you can't think about it in a homogenous way. You have to have a diverse group of people who then are contributing to that. So I think that's one of the first points I want to make. Again, as an organisation, actually on the 8th of March this year, we have something called Elevating Women in Cyber conference taking place in London. And so again, it's about walking the talk. Mm-hmm. So we're absolutely doing something, and it's really about, again, raising the profile or showing the profile of some fantastic women that are currently within the cybersecurity profession. It's about looking at opportunities that basically exist. So meeting some of the top people within the profession, I think, which is really important. But also looking at where there's currently potential kind of barriers, what can we do to break down those barriers? And there's specific things that HR departments need to do in relation to their jobs. I'll give you one quick example. Mm-hmm. If there's a specific job that's advertised and you have 15 different certifications for that role, then it's going to create a barrier. And that happens an awful lot because the HR department's written the specification without a conversation maybe with a CISO or someone that's actually in the profession. So that creates an auto barrier. So it's really around looking at how can you make jobs flexible? How can you ensure that ads both inclusive but also reflect who you want to bring into your organisation? And who's currently in the organisation says an awful lot as well, because people very often look at what's the management team, what's the structure, what's the diversity or lack of, and make decisions based on that.
Okay, that's brilliant. And Sam, if I could turn to you, pretty much the same question, but I'm going to approach it in a different way. Now, again, I do realise, and I'm not going to make any apologies, as I'm not going to be ageist, but we're in different, even our spectrums of our career. You kind of started out, I'm kind of more towards the end, but hey, let's leave it there. But what do you think in terms of sort of your thoughts, your opinions in terms of, for the female side of things, in terms of bringing them to group? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. I'll say generally I can see sort of an increase in uptake as to women in cyber. I would say within the business we have a women in cyber in the team, and the aim is to encourage more women to get into cybersecurity, and also things like remote working as well. That sort of helps because women can have kids and sort of commitment outside of work to ensure that a place is a lot more inclusive. And specifically with sort of black women, it's you can't be what you can see, and ultimately these conversations and to understand that you can have someone to mentor you, because sometimes in your career you can get some tough times, and whoever is there to sort of pull you through is quite important. So generally having more sort of representation, so women that are looking to get into cyber can understand the few people they can reach out to, and also plugging into the ecosystem such as women in cyber within the PwC network and also externally can also be quite useful.
Okay, good. Simon, please.
Just one quick point. You're absolutely spot on. I think just as an addition, there is several programmes throughout the UK that focus on kind of the next generation, that focus on women in cyber, whether it's a career changer or whether it's kind of new entrants. One of the issues is sometimes they're quite low profile, so you have to be in the know to know they exist, but there are some there. So some of the work that's taken place is around mapping what currently exists. When we've got all that information, it will be on our website for the council, so you can see the different organisations that are doing work, not just in this area around black women in cyber, but around different routes into the profession, organisations doing micro projects, free certifications, etc. But just to say, there is some great work already taking place, and sometimes it is just around finding it, which is a bit of a shame.
Access to information, as they say.
It's good, good. I like it. I like the ideas, I've got to be honest. Now, I think one of the myths we've kind of dispelled is around programming and STEM. At least I hope we have, and if anybody's got any contributions on that side of things, please do tell. But there's something else that's been on my mind as well whilst I was preparing for this. And I'm guilty of it, and I'll be open and honest about it. The language that we speak, our cyber language, kind of puts people off. The way we talk and I'm guilty of it. I've had years of it, and it's brainwashed into me. This is the way I kind of talk. And I'm having to reflect, and not by way of a plug, we've got a future CISO event that's coming up, and one of those things is to step back, right? Speak the language of the person, reflect their sort of language so they understand it, especially from a business perspective. And I'm asking a question rather than, kind of saying, well, I think it's it. But do you think that's one of the things? Sharif, if I could ask you that question, is that one of the things you think is a barrier to?
Certainly, yeah, I think it probably is, because, if people don't understand what they're supposed to be trying to get into, how are they going to then try to, access it? So I think it's definitely key to try to speak, where possible, in layman's terms, or even where technical terms are required, trying to ensure that, those are explained and that people understand, what we're saying, and that we make it as clear as possible so that people can access, the things that are there, and that people have, they can plug into the opportunities or, into the knowledge base that already exists. So, yeah, I think it's important.
So good. Just if I could just carry on that, do you have any examples? I mean, in your sort of, that you think, well, hang on a minute, could have said that a bit different. I know what you're saying, but We're 2 years in, I would have said it differently. You got any useful tips? Not even if not examples, just tips. Just say, well, you know what? Yes, rather than data privacy and PII and all sort of. Is there anything that you can think of that you say will make it easy for you?
Put me on the spot there.
No, that's what I'm like.
What can I think of? Not off the top of my head, no. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
It's really, as I said, I'm not a technical expert at all. So, I would say 85%, if not 90%, of my organisation are non-technical. Okay, so even though we're leading on the standards development, and for us, it's about engaging with the profession, engaging with partners, engaging with one of our key strategic partners, NCSC. So yeah, that's an acronym. But one of the things we basically do is for staff that join the organisation, we basically have a directory of acronyms because it's so detailed. And also, when you're in the profession, there's so many different terms that are basically used that mean one thing in cyber, but something else in the external market. Right. So it's really important that we use a specific term. What does it mean in the cyber world? What does it mean externally? And communication and being able to break that down. So, for example, for board members, so a CISO reporting to the board or reporting to a board of trustees or board of directors, the board of directors is going to be looking at return on investment, going to be looking at sales income, etc. So they might not see the value of security, but you have to basically, when you're doing an incident report, etc., it's really important to be able to articulate so the business people understand exactly what you're talking about, what you're referring to, and what impact that creates in the business. So I think the language piece is really important. So just trying to get that right. I think hopefully that covers it.
Do you think that's a barrier?
Just to follow up to what Simon said, cyber risk is a business risk ultimately. And it needs to be communicated in a sort of a business language point of view. I think there is sort of a historical legacy issue with sort of a lot of documents were written using a technical mindset. But I think it's called Cyber Body Book of Knowledge. In there, it sort of tend to demystify and addresses the different routes and knowledge into cybersecurity. So it's probably worth checking out. But generally, I think that's why cybersecurity is so diverse, because the easier you can break down the cyber risks to someone at a senior level, the better you're able to communicate and get the budget, the requirements to implement a project, which is why communication is quite key. So I think the bridge and understanding both technical and business is sort of a good place to be in conveying the message correctly.
Okay, so in my mind, I hope I'm right in thinking that it's not just something that I just cooked. Well, actually, I did. Cooked up thinking that that's probably one of those barriers, but it seems like it's very, very real in terms of getting that attraction, if you like, for whoever's looking to cyber. Just, well, I need to understand what you're saying, or right, or can I relate to you to be able to get in cyber, let alone being black and trying to get into that. Just more generally speaking, again, so that's a second kind of myth we're trying to bust here in terms of whatever. Can you think of any others where you think, well, let's just dispel all of these sort of myths? Is there any other? Simon, do you think is that something else that we could think of? And I'm putting you on the spot, by the way.
I think we've covered some of the biggest ones, especially around roots into the profession and the myths around STEM, etc. And as I said, STEM is important. It plays a role in some, but not in all. And I think that's a really important message. I think we've covered some of the key, more chunky ones, I would say.
Okay. I sort of didn't quite go into the specifics, if you like, of my background, but just for the audience, and I'll kind of build on this, and I just really want your views in terms of direction, where you think your career is going to go. I started off life in GRC, governance, risk and compliance, so kind of the policy area. That's how I started off. And then I moved from that sort of area, then I moved into infrastructure security, a bit of security architecture. But what I'm saying is I started off with a non-technical role, and then I started dabbling into areas sort of like, I'm very careful here to use the right language, vulnerability management or penetration testing, which is ethical hacking. And I decided, well, yeah, it feels okay, but I stepped away from it because it wasn't for me. Not that I couldn't do it, but I just didn't feel right. And I really just want to shed light on that and just say, right, okay, I'm painting a picture of, you can go in, do bits and pieces and say, is that for me? Then move on, right? And try some things. Is there any, Simon, you and I know that you've started off in that sort of way, but if I could, pick on Sam for a second. Sam, you're focused on OT security, right? You've made that quite clear. Why not IT security? Why not branch out into response or something? Do you see yourself dabbling in that? Sharifa, that's coming for you as well, just so you know. Yeah.
Sure. So I would say so OT, but we have in Industry 4.0. IoT is also coming as well. And the great thing about OT security is within that, you get to do incident response, NIST assessment, penetration testing, also CAF assessment as well. So within my career, I aim to cover all of these aspects to building a complete portfolio, basically. So yes.
Sharifa, do you see yourself becoming an out-and-out techie?
Yeah,
not
so
from law?
I think I'm probably at the stage that you were, working in government, working in policy. So I think definitely I do see, a wealth of opportunity to, if I wanted to go more into the more technical side of things, more, for me, I think at the moment I would like to, go more into like risk management, technical terms, but more on the, government risk and compliance side. So I think, as we said, there are loads of opportunities and it's just about, trying which one works and seeing what sticks.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Simon,
absolutely.
You got to be on that?
Yeah, well, a contribution into this one, absolutely. To answer your question before, just really quickly, and it's only kind of linking to, it's not so much a myth, but what's important. One of the things around cyber security is that it's not seen in the same vein as accountancy, as PwC, etc., accountancy or engineering or law. So it's around the professionalisation. So as an organisation, what we've received is charterships. We're a chartered organisation, but also can give post-nominals to individuals in cybersecurity. So that's about professionalising the profession. That gives it then that credibility, so on the same vein as others. That's really important, okay? That's really, really important. The other thing is around the kind of the opportunities. It is around, especially for apprentices or people who want to join the profession, because they're not sure exactly what route they want to go into, what specialism, the security architecture, risk, etc. It's important to have a carousel model. So you're basically working in different departments. It might be 6 months in each. And I know someone who's doing this currently, but I'm going to be engaging with so he can showcase some of the great work he's doing. He works in the government department. And so they're basically working in different departments. Then out of that would say, I really enjoyed penetration testing. I've done 6 months, but this is the one I'm passionate about. I think that's really important, because then exactly what you're doing, you can then see out of all these, which one do I really feel? Which one's really I'm really passionate about? And then then in relation to our structure, then they work up from associate, principal to charter. So they work through that kind of route, but understanding how the other areas work.
That's really interesting. Just gets you to be that rounded cybersecurity professional from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I've got some questions coming in. I'm glad to at least articulate here that with content that we've covered, we've just got the listeners in just saying, well, right, okay, you're answering some of the questions, especially around the programming and things and just like STEM, and saying, well, fine, thank you for busting that myth for me. But I've got a question coming in, which is about the transferable skills. How do you obtain information, right, on transferable skills from a banking or financial industry perspective? Anybody want to take that on?
Okay, I don't mind answering that. So part of the structure we're putting in place is around the, as I said, a kind of 3 levels, so associate, principal and charter. So there are 3 kind of titles. When you're kind of looking at assessments, it's always important to look at accredited prior experience and learning. Yeah, so as I said, I'm not a technical expert, but what I had was transferable skills from my previous jobs and previous roles and knowledge. So how do you engage with government departments? How do you bring people on board to negotiate and develop as part of a co-production model, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really looking at what skills do you currently have, understanding them, then looking at how does that then, when I say transfer, how does that then relate to, out of all the different specialisms, all again on our website, what the different specialisms are, how does that then relate and kind of cross-fertilise? Then from that you can work out, okay, there's 60% of what I'm doing within finance would be helpful here. Risk is a really, risk in one business, especially risk in finance, is risk anywhere. You see, so when you learn risk models, risk mitigation, et cetera, then you've kind of got a really good model. So then you would look at risk in relation to cybersecurity. So really, again, look on our website, look at the different kind of the different specialisms, seeing how some of those kind of cross-translate, and then you can see where you kind of fit. One of the things we will be also doing is really helping people on that journey, because it's a question we get posed a lot. So again, we're a new organisation, so it's work in progress, but ultimately it's around looking at if you've got this knowledge, this skills, this qualification, how does that then relate to these different specialisms? So work in progress, so it might take a while to get that one kind of fully sorted, but it's definitely on the road.
Just to add to that quickly, to echo everything that you said, but I think another practical way that I've practiced it as someone that hasn't come from a technical background in the past would be to look at the types of job adverts that I would like to go for, and look at the skills that they're looking for, and try to map out what skills I have or what skills I've built up throughout my career and how that maps to that job. So try to, or where I do lack some of those, try to ascertain how I'm going to gain those and be that person that would fit that job description. So I think that's just a practical tip that share.
That's good. Well, you've done it. You've living proof that you've done it already, moving from law. Yeah.
I guess maybe just to add to that is also reaching out to people in the specific industries with the job titles which you're after, asking them how did they do it, what skills do they use to get there, and how can you build to then you can sort of assess actually, is this the industry I want to go into, what is your day-to-day like, and sort of looping onto that, at PwC here we have the Black Talent Business Program. It's sort of a 3-day period where you get paid as well, and you can get a scheme onto it. So it's worth coming in. There's sort of jobs available, and you can see what part of the business which you want to work on and get some experience, and then decide is it something I want to commit to long term. So it's quite interesting.
And I'm going to make a point in response to that as well, just to kind of bring it together a bit. It's just based on the conversation we've had, nobody on this panel started off in cybersecurity. I didn't start in cybersecurity, I was doing something different. And then an opportunity for cyber came in and I thought, hang on, go for it. So I didn't. So I actually went on that carousel that you're talking about, learned bits and pieces, and you're on this journey as well, and everybody has. And I think it's just identifying what areas in the banking and finance industry kind of map to where can I start off? This is my core, how can I start and build off on that? And perhaps even find something else as your core. So it's really, really interesting from that perspective. But I guess the other thing that I'm really thinking about is so much, I mean, that's just one profession, and banking is a huge sector, and there are huge opportunities in terms of I understand the banking and finance language, but I'm really just thinking about it in other sectors where you say, well, can there be easy transferable in terms of that? And I'm really thinking for that in more broader terms, for those who are looking to get into cyber, those who are black who are looking to get into cyber. So if you've started off, and I'm going to use you, for example, Sharifa, you've started off in law, right? Can you shed some more light? Because I know we kind of touched on it, but I think it's just pertinent that I know we're talking about the banking. I really want to pick on something like law. I mean, law? The cyber? This seems like such a big leap, and it really is really good to if you could bring that to life as to why you moved across to that, and yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of my career, it's mostly been working with legislation. So I've always still worked in things that tended to my legal training or, you know, the skills that I've developed within law. But I think for me, it was also looking at, you know, what is something that's topical that I can also utilise the skills that I've developed on. So, you know, I may not necessarily be, you know, drafting contracts, but, you know, that ability to pay attention to detail is important when you're, you know, assessing risk, for example. So I think, you know, or, you know, communicating with different people. And as we've said, most times you need to speak to, you know, to board level people, so they need to understand, you know, how is this going to translate into business, you know, opportunities for me. You know, how is this going to essentially lead to profit? So I think, you know, those skills that I've picked up doing law, I've been able to still utilise and still build on. And yeah, for me, I think that's why it's been such an attractive career to be in.
Listen, it's been great. I mean, I can go on for another half an hour, another 2 hours if you want, but in the interest of time, and of course we're only here for a short while, and if you could really just succinctly just kind of summarise the topic that we've got, which is around black tech talent, and opening up, you know, the opportunities, if you like, for black people, or trying to move into cyber. Any last words that you probably want to shed on this before I kind of close the session? Sam, I'll start with you.
Sure, I'll say be curious and proactive, and also reach out, ask questions. That'll probably be my last word. Ask questions where you can.
Good. Sharifa?
Yeah, similarly, I think, you know, don't let, even if there isn't a representation at the moment, don't let that be a barrier to wanting to pursue a career. You know, try to, you know, reach out to the people that are, you know, that reflect you, that you are already practicing, you know, in the career. So, you know, don't let anything be a barrier, I would say.
Brilliant. And finally, Simon.
Yep. I mean, I concur with my colleagues absolutely. I think it's important to engage with the community. I mean, it's a very passionate community. People are willing to give their time and really share their knowledge and their experiences. There's fantastic opportunities within the profession. So absolutely, reach out, obviously connect with people, look at things like mentoring, find out the great opportunities that exist, and do your best. But we will welcome you as a profession. That's what I'd say.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much. It's been absolutely fantastic. Sam, thank you. Sharifa, thank you. Simon, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And to the panel who've been up, sorry, the audience out there listening to this, thank you very much for this. So we've got 3 previous Black Tech Talent series that you can go. It's all available on LinkedIn, and this one will be as well. But I do want you to stay tuned for more of our LinkedIn live sessions on Black Tech Talent. Thank you very much for listening and tuning in.